Welcome to this edition of MIDI Guitar, and Modartt just released Pianoteq 8, and it includes a nylon string classical guitar, and it also includes a release as an iOS app. No compromise has been taken, it's the same software that's going to be delivered, and this all sounds awesome. While the iOS app isn't here yet, let's look at how well the nylon string behaves in a MIDI Guitar 2 setup. This is the startup view that you'll meet when you start up Pianoteq 8 in this case. I have the standard edition. I haven't seen the use of going up another notch. For me, this is good enough. There are 3 layers you can come in on. There's a player version, there's a standard version, and then there's a pro version. This is the new look. Nowadays you have a few different interiors, in this case the piano, so that you see what kind of instruments you're working with. So if you were to go down this list, you're also gonna see stuff like vibraphones, since I've purchased those as well. There's another instruments section here for instruments that you haven't bought into yet, or if you're thinking of trying them out, you can try them in demo mode, as you see here. So here's a Celeste that I don't have. If I want to try this, I'll get to try it in demo mode. Could be some keys disabled and stuff like. Absolute first thing you need to do if you're gonna play something like a piano on Pianoteq, go into options, and you have something called the global MIDI mapping, because with many of these instruments you don't want to have pitch bend designed. You have 3 versions here. You have a minimalistic, you have full features, and you have something called no PB, that's no pitch bend. You can use this with those instruments that aren't suited for pitch bend. For some reason it's always using pitch bends in its original setup. Doesn't matter for keyboards, they doesn't send pitch bend in the same way as MIDI Guitar does. MIDI Guitar does that continuously. So if we were to go to the guitar, pitch bend could work, but due to the physical nature of the guitar as a MIDI controller, depending on how much I press down between the frets, the note is going to fluctuate a bit. We generally don't hear this in guitar, but when it comes to translating it to a model instrument, it's starting to get painfully obvious. There are 2 remedies, and the first is to go into options and use the no pitch bend, but then you get no pitch bend. The other is to go into MIDI Guitar and use a script. Scripts are something that we can load as extra functions in our MIDI effects slots. There are some Lua scripts that we can go in and change ourselves. We need to alter some of the settings to get the most out of it. Where do I get these scripts? Go into the Jam Origin forum. Magnifying glass here is where you do your searches from. Download it, and after that go into preferences. Go into something called MIDI Guitar data folder. There you have something called MIDI machines. You just drop it in that folder. Go back, and in the MIDI FX slot here you have the script right here. This script is called Bend Attack version 3, and you can get it on the MIDI Guitar forum page. I'll leave a link in the description, and I'm going to go over all the functions here in Pianoteq for you, so buckle up because there's a ton of stuff that you can do. First thing we see, we have this volume, we have this dynamic, we have the pedals, and we have this little box which I will go into last. Volume isn't really that hard to understand. Dynamics, I tend to minimize this dynamic headroom, because if I maximize dynamics here, I get a really big difference between playing soft and playing really hard. And generally when I'm playing, I want everything to go through in the mix. So I tend to play with something like 20 decibels here. It's not giving me that much dynamic headroom, but it gives me total control over that dynamic headroom, so I can play within it. And for me to be able to play along to stuff, I need to have this small space, because otherwise I will find myself in the bottom layer where I have to play really hard to get through. So look at these two, and when it comes to velocity, of course, it's the same thing here. Make these settings so that you can access the whole spectrum here, controllable. The sound properties that goes with playing really soft also gets through this way, so you don't have to play hard to play a bit loud. You'll get through anyway. So let's look at the pedals now. You can see that I'm moving at least 3 pedals because I have this Kawai F30. The first one is, of course, a pure sustain pedal. It works as you would expect. It works like a piano pedal. So it's not in itself a guitar function. You can see that as an added function to your guitar playing, because most of us don't play with that kind of precision anyway. The next pedal, I know will be a joy for any Al Di Meola fans out there, because now you don't need to actually palm mute your stuff. You can just step on your pedal and you get these damps anyway. Playing MIDI guitar traditionally would mean a problem to put your hand on the guitar. You'd get some sort of note and stuff like that. It really don't happen that much with this. Why this instrument is so good is because it doesn't give you anything unexpected. If you're a guitarist, you're going to be pretty familiar with all the sounds coming out of this. I don't have any pedal connected to this third pedal here, but the fourth pedal is my third pedal, and it's set to a glissandi right now. If I'm holding that pedal down, I can just choose 2 notes and it sort of glisses between those. Let those airplanes leave first. So glissing between notes with this kind of intervals, you wouldn't do on a guitar and have it sound this smooth. If you do that, you're truly a master. Right click, I'll see what kind of options I have to assign a certain function to this pedal if I want. So I have rattle pedal, and these are related to piano vocabulary, so everything doesn't make sense for a guitarist, I think. I don't know what a Mozart rail is. I'm going to look that up though. But we can look at something like pinch harmonics. Obviously the pinch harmonic is sort of associated already with this third pedal, so that's why it's also being depressed when I'm pressing down on my fourth pedal. But now you know how these pedals work. Let's go down here, because here are some new features that I haven't seen in the Modartt piano sections. I had to dig a little deeper when it came to this guitar stuff. If you look at this exclamation mark here, this is the panic button. So beneath that, if I hover above it, I get this little hand that says that I can detach the keyboard. There's a little T here to sort of set things in order again. If we go into the little arrow below, you see something like tuning. With an open G tuning, for instance, it's not gonna retune your actual physical guitar. I have a keyboard here as well, so it gives me the D also on the keyboard. Going back to standard tuning here, I don't have anything on that D anymore. This tuning is always sending the E note on the E note until you get into the real retuning stuff. Going down to body here, you have hollow, you have semi-hollow, and you have solid. This is what it sounds like with the solid body setting. Think of a Godin or some sort of nylon string but solid body instrument. I'm going to go back and add reverb here again. We have key switches and stuff like this, and I'm not going to go into those too much. Reserved channels and stuff. There's a lot that I can't go into because it's too much. So some of this you are going to find out for yourself. We have a slider that slides between casual and pro, and that casual player would be as opposed to the casual player, the pro. The pro will have worked all its life on getting rid of small noises from where you move your fingers from one position to another. This slider gives you a possibility of choosing more or less of these finger noises and release noises and stuff like this. Just below this Casual Pro meter, you have a legato on tapping or legato off alternative. Obviously, if you're using legato, you're gonna have something like hammer-ons and pull-offs. And that sounds in a special way. If you use the tapping alternative, you're gonna get a more uniform sound response. You're having, of course, hammer-ons and pull-offs as well, but since you're not having this first attack from the picked note, you're getting a more even or uniform result, I think. And then you have this legato off, which would be a straight alternate picking style, I think. For me, I'm using the legato on for most occasions. We have something called condition here, and it goes from mint to really worn, and I tend to put this slightly on the worn side to get some small imperfections when it comes to the tuning. It gives me sort of a homey, realistic sound, since I haven't had a great nylon string guitar ever. I'm kind of used to a bad instrument, so that's what sounds normal and realistic to me. Not this bad. This is what the mint to worn spectrum here is all about. You can see these two colored parts of the keyboard down here as well. That's also special functions. In this case, you can tell the instrument where you're intending to play on your neck. So if I'm gonna play something Phrygian in a standard position in C major, and it would be in E Phrygian, I would be somewhere around here. The nylon strings sound different depending on where you play your stuff on the neck. So I can actually assign that here. So you can see the little bar here that moves around depending on where I sort of place it. So if I want to play really high up, this is of course for when you're recording stuff. You want to have that particular, that exact sound following where that stuff is going to be played. You can also decide on this side which string you're thinking of playing something on. I need to have that depressed for it to work. So change to the D string. I can try to change to the E string, see what happens. Yeah, it can play that. Then you have these three keys here in the beginning. You have the harmonics on the first. I'm going to use the keyboard as well here. And then you have Rasgueados. And then you have some thumb action. So this is supposed to be played with the thumb for a super realistic interpretation. If we go here, there's a G and a C here and a D. We have different appearances on the keyboard. I think we've gone over the big things down here. Looking inside here instead, we have the tuning department, and of course you can choose between different hertzes for your A, and you have some sort of settings that I'm not going to go into. You have equal temperament, and here's the interesting part for me with sort of an equal temperament or a well-tempered instrument. I can choose a well-tempered instrument and it will actually retune my instrument right away. Not this instrument of course, but that one. So the output is now well-tempered in this case. I can also tune this to a harmonic scale. This is of course just a temperament, it's a tuning temperament. If I want to sort of use another scale altogether, I can go into Scala files here and say I want to use a Japanese scale here. I have some 5-note scale. And you can also see the frets here as they would appear on a guitar that was tuned like this. So this is what a micro-tuned fretboard with this tuning would look like. Something like a Hexany 1357 scale, and I have some let me go back to some standard temperament here. So this is where you go in and tune your guitar to certain smaller changes in temperaments or to bigger changes in sort of micro tunings and stuff like this, and you have all the possibilities in the world with this instrument. This goes for all the instruments actually that you have, so it doesn't matter if it's a piano, if it's a guitar, if it's the vibraphone or whatever. You tune any of those instruments in exactly the same way if you want to retune or detune or whatever. Now we have a voicings part as well. Have some plucking brightness, piano, a mezzo and a forte. For anything that's piano, that's everything that you would play on this level. Intersect is here, so this, that would be a piano pluck. If I want to increase the brightness of anything that I play in that particular region, I can move this meter. Now any plucking I do in the piano region will have more brightness to it as opposed to the mezzo and the forte right now. when I come down to the piano part again, it's going to be more accentuated. It's more likely that you want a more pronounced forte part, because that's when you actually use some force to pluck your notes. So increasing the forte doesn't sound strange. Then you have this spectrum profile, and every note is made up of its overtones, and you can set the overtone relationship here with these meters. You can add to that particular spectrum, and you change the quality of the sound. You change how the actual notes sound internally. It's not as obvious for all of these. I think that if I change the second overtone perhaps, I tend to get a more organy sound. Each of these have a certain quality attached to them with regard to the way that the sounds sound to you in a very, very precise manner here. After that you have plucking noises here, and those are kind of self-explanatory. The plucking point, the higher up you play, the warmer the sound. So if I move this down to the bridge, next you have the design here, and that's the soundboard impedance, and you have cutoff and you have Q factor. It says the greater the soundboard mechanical impedance, the longer the sound becomes. If you want to get a hint of what it could mean for a steel string guitar, raise both impedance and cutoff here. It's not really a steel string yet, but I mean you sort of hear it, right? Those qualities at least. You have this Q factor here, and it says that the greater Q factor, the faster the decrease of the high overtones. A vision of what happens if you change perhaps the gauges of the strings. They don't ring for as long, and they're kind of dulling down. So string length I'm not going to go into. I think that's more of a piano concept really. Sympathetic resonance as well, but I think that we can at least look at what happens with this. If I raise this energy right up, you're gonna hear. I think you get some idea of a use for that perhaps, right? Let's go into action here. You have damper position, you have damping duration, you have last damper, mute and stuff like this. Related to the damper, you have key release noise, and you have miscellaneous finger noises here as well. So I'm not gonna go into mallet bounce. Equalizer, of course. You want to have some equalizer. I tend to go for the fat bass. I want a bit boomier sound when it. So now we're at the part I skipped over before, and go in either via this or note effects. We have the vibrato that I told you I would skip, but on the other hand we have this attack envelope. The standard setting is of course 0, but if you pull it up to say 0.1, perhaps something like this, you get this really nice effect. that I really see how a lot of people can use. I just wanted to give you a heads up on this one. So the effects then, of course, we have stuff here like tremolo and wah and chorus and flanger and phaser and whatnot. I'm not going to go into that because these are the same for all the instruments and you have all the time in the world to go over that. Just know that it's here under the effects, and as we load them, you see them light up here in the bar below that as well. Now it's only a reverb. If I load an equalizer as well, go back, you see that I have an equalizer as well. So the things I haven't talked about yet are the microphone. They're really a chapter of their own, but I'm sadly not going to go into this because I don't feel I have the time really. But it's worth exploring if you get this software, how much you can do with the positioning of the microphones in relation to your instruments, because it really makes a difference. And these are really precise room sounds and really precise emulations of microphones. The microphone section in itself is an argument for buying this instrument. So one thing that I skipped over before that I really want to mention, perhaps, if you see this guitar plug here, I'm sure this is going to be something that we can experiment with in the future. When I play, my guitar sound actually comes in this way, and my guitar interacts with this instrument via the sympathetic resonance. You can use another external instrument and play it via the body, say, of a piano. Of course that will work even for the guitar playing into this software, but I haven't explored that option. I don't want to go into that just now because I don't see if even we can make it work, given that MIDI guitar has this latency that makes whatever comes in just a bit slower, so the attack will sort of overlap. But not saying that the same thing will be true for, say, MIDI Guitar 3. I have high hopes. So perhaps we use our own sort of transients from our own picking within this instrument, going via the body of that instrument with a sympathetic resonance. For any adventurous person, I would absolutely advise you to go and research this. Perhaps there's a hidden gem here somewhere. I think I've sort of exhausted the relevant settings and stuff that could be relevant for anyone interested in using MIDI guitar with this instrument. It's extremely playable. It's super nimble, and as you've seen, it doesn't make those strange sounds that we're accustomed to when it comes to sampled instruments when we play MIDI guitar together with those. And I want to be extremely clear with that this is not an ADSR instrument with an EQ on it. We have so many settings that we can work with. This will easily migrate to your iPad or your iPhone with the same quality. So is it an option for you? If you can agree with the sound, you will certainly agree with the playability. I guess I'll see you later for another review or for something else on the MIDI guitar. But bye for now.